Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribol. So the inspiration for the talk I was handed apparently on happiness is because yesterday has been declared some years back as the International Day of Happiness. And the UN declared it, so it must be. The drive to experience happiness is very deep. The yogic or Vedic understanding is that you and I, we are eternal spiritual beings. The body that we're currently inhabiting is not us, nor is the mind that we are constantly doing battle with, and which is often misleading us, is also not us. And it is the constitutional position of the living being, the self, and in Sanskrit this is called Atma. The constitutional position of the Atma is a state of perpetual happiness. But we have lost our way. We generally don't really, I know that I exist, but who am I? I have come to so deeply identify the external garment, the body, as being who I am. That's where I draw my identity from, or whatever's going on in my mind. Big mistake. So this is our natural condition, and that is why we have a hankering for happiness. But as a general rule of thumb, when we seek happiness outside of our own self. We look to the world. We look to other entities, bodies. We look to different experiences. And we seek to draw things near to us in the hope that if we can hang on to it, we will become happy. And that's kind of why I'm using the title, Happiness is an Inside Job. I mean, when you have a robbery in some place, the idea is, oh, somebody from outside has come into the building and broken into the safe and taken all of our treasure. And then the police do some investigation, and then they find out, oh, it was the security guy and one of the other managers in the office that had a plot. They knew when there was going to be lots of money there, and they planned and they hired some people to help them to take it all. And then the police declare it was an inside job. You know, this is so much like what goes on with us, in the sense that we have this tendency to always be looking for that which is outside of us to make us happy. One of the things that's really astonishing, I took a few notes here, there's a couple of things I'll read. One of the things that the Vedas directly tie the experience of happiness, you know, the degree to which you will experience happiness in your life is going to be primarily determined by how peaceful you are. The degree to which you are peaceful will make it so that you can experience happiness. And that's an extraordinary idea. I mean, that's almost like a foreign idea, because we're constantly told, you need to party. You got to go out there and take life by the horns. You've got to wrestle your happiness out of everything around you. And the more active you are in doing that, the greater the chance that you will be happy. And that's absolutely not true. There is not even one iota of truth in that idea. But, you know, this is what we've got, the consumer society, where everybody is convinced that if I can just acquire this or acquire that experience or this or that relationship, then I will find my happiness. And the problem is, the more you are active in going out there to try and take something and pull it in close with a view to it making you happy, the more you will actually become unpeaceful. You will be disturbed and you will be anxious. And that's just like, whoa, that's the opposite to everything I hold to be true, everything that I've learned, everything that society is teaching me. There was a well-known author and British economist from the 70s, E.F. Schumacher. He famously wrote a book called Small is Beautiful. And he made an observation in this regard also, that this quest for consumption, the greed for getting money to consume more, actually kills happiness. He states, I suggest, and of course he'd do it in a proper English accent, I suggest that the foundations of peace cannot be laid by universal prosperity. This idea that if everybody just had more money, you would have peacefulness and happiness would reign. In the universal prosperity in the modern sense is problematic because such prosperity, if attainable at all, is attainable only by cultivating such drives of human nature as greed and envy. So just pause there. So he's talking about how the modern economy is driven by envy and greed. I mean, that is the sole principle of advertising, the greed for more and envy of what others have. They call it lifestyle advertising. They may not even show the product. They get, you know, models, male, female, whatever, who represent or whom a target audience can identify with. And then they show them being successful and happy and everything. And then there's some association of a product with it. That's the principle. Advertising is founded on the understanding that everyone is empty. Everyone feels an emptiness within. And so what I must do is associate a product or an experience with the promise of filling up the emptiness. There is no other way it works. This is the principle of how it works. And he has questioned, if you build a life, a lifestyle, a whole economic system based upon cultivating in individuals greed and envy for what others have and a longing to have it too. If you build a system based upon that, he said, this will destroy intelligence, happiness, serenity, and thereby the peacefulness of man. This is not some like fluffy sort of, highfalutin idea or something. This is practical reality. But we tend to have become so jaded and so conditioned by all this messaging that we're getting all the time that people practically cannot see the reality of this in their life. And even if they get some glimpse of it, they have lost the intelligence and the strength to go, no, that's it. I'm done with this. We're not doing this anymore. So in the Vedic texts, and I'm going to reference here the Bhagavad Gita, there's this astonishing description of happiness. Now, happiness in Vedic teaching is divided into two types, what is called material happiness and that which is spiritual. Material happiness has two characteristics. One is, it is fleeting. It comes and it goes. It is temporary. The second characteristic is it can never fulfill you. You cannot become satisfied by it, because material happiness is an experience of the body, the mind, and the senses. It doesn't touch the soul itself. And so that hankering, that internal desire for deep and lasting happiness is not touched by these experiences. And so, I always use Russell Brand, famously made that example, that you can be stimulating your senses. He talked about his own addictions to alcohol, to heroin, to cocaine, and copious amounts of sex. He said he was totally addicted to this. And so he could get as much of this as he wanted, and that's what he was doing most of the time. And yet, even in spite of all those highs and all the stimulation, he was desperate inside, even suicidal. And that is a proof that those experiences are not going to fulfill you. So there is a whole other category of spiritual happiness, which is not really what we're going to touch on here, just saying that it's there. With material happiness, the Bhagavad Gita categorizes it into three specific categories that come from three different experiences and result in three different types of outcomes. And they talk about how there are these three invisible and incredibly powerful forces that are moving the entire material creation. They refer to them as the modes of material nature. In Sanskrit, there's the triguna, the three qualities. One is called the mode of goodness, the other one is the mode of passion, and the third is the mode of ignorance. So I'll read I'll read this. O best of the Bharatas, now please hear from me about the three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned souls enjoy, and by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. Whoa, that's a novel idea, that you can choose a course of action that both provides a form of happiness and bring you to the condition of the end of all distress. So I'm going to jump to the second type of happiness first, because I think everybody will be able to relate to this. That happiness, which is derived from the contact of the senses with their objects, the sense objects, and which appears like nectar at first, but poison in the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. That kind of sounds like a lot of relationships, doesn't it? Like nectar at first, and then becoming poison in the end. But so many relationships, so many pursuits. You know, any great pursuit for perfection always ends with tremendous unhappiness. I mean, even you become a world-class athlete and everybody's chanting your name and you're there pumping your fist and, you know, you did it. And then your body starts aging. I mean, you look at Muhammad Ali, what an amazing fighter. And I met the guy, he was like so charismatic. He was a force. Everywhere he went, people were just drawn to him. And it was just like, you know, he was Superman. Like for real. And then as he begins to age, and he starts suffering from Parkinson's, and he can't keep his body together, and then he's talking with a slur and drooling saliva. How painful is that? You know, this is the whole quest for happiness that's driven by the mode of passion. And I tell you, we could sit here and talk, well, I could sit here and talk about this for a couple of hours, just this particular thing, because there's so much behind it. Then it says, that which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So this is like the opposite. The previous thing that we talked about, the whole focus is about stimulating the senses, tasting, smelling, touching. Oh, it feels so good. All the senses, stimulating them. And the happiness that is derived from those experiences can be like nectar in the beginning, but will eventually become like poison. And here we have the opposite. That which in the beginning may be like poison. So what are they referring to? Well, they're referring to the pursuit of spiritual life. People that were dedicated to the pursuit of spiritual life, it meant living a life of some austerity, of some restraint, of giving up bad habits. You know, it's just like, oh my God, just hanging for a fag here. And just hanging for my next high, you know. And you try to get somebody to stop, you know, who's dealing with an addiction. And you know, it's physiological and mental. But when they get over the physiological part, the mental part is compelling. And it usually takes about a year and a half of really intense psychological counseling and people doing a lot of self-work just to get through it. So when we look at people wanting to move from that kind of lifestyle to a more spiritual lifestyle, it may seem very difficult in the beginning. But then later, a person begins to feel the freedom that comes from not being compelled to act in so many ways. And with it will come amazing spiritual experience as well. So then the third type, but a person, and that happiness which is blind to self-realization. So this is broadly the intoxication and things that produce those kind of effects. Happiness which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from the beginning to the end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be in the nature of ignorance. And of course, these three types of happiness produce like three different types of effect. They have three different types of outcome. We're not going to talk about all of this tonight. I just wanted to lay some ideas out there for you that the pursuit of actual spiritual life is profound. And the way in which one is trained to look at life and different types of thinking and different types of conditioned action that we become conditioned to, and then the results that happen and then how we deal with those, is just, it's absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But what we have is a situation in the world now where it's almost bereft of actual spiritual knowledge. Many of the things that people think are spiritual are in fact not. Anyway, that's a huge subject. But what I would just like to leave you with is this message that do not confuse stimulation of the body and mind as being the actual happiness that you need. It's not, it never will be. Does that mean one should shun all kinds of pleasurable experience? No, it's not about shunning it either. It's about getting your head on straight and actually going down a path that produces an outcome of happiness. Bear always in mind, the more peaceful that you can become, the greater possibility to experience lasting and worthwhile happiness. And if you are not peaceful, if you are agitated, fearful, anxious, desiring things all the time, hankering for stuff, you will not experience any lasting happiness in your life. Peacefulness is an underlying requirement for a person to be able to begin to experience real happiness. Okay, anybody have a question? Was this a bit overwhelming, or it's okay? It's all right? Well, we had an interesting weekend. Paramahamsa Das here hauled a bunch of us down to Earthbeat. It was far out. He had some wild kirtans. And I talked to people a little bit about the futility of getting stoned and the empty and fake yogi trips, you know, kundalinis and yeah. Please, this is not actually spiritual. There is a big difference between subtle material experience and spiritual experience. Subtle material experience is still material. It will still produce the kind of outcomes that we spoke of here. Thank you very much. Haribol. Whoa. So, I'm going to sing Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Hari Om.